Good evening and welcome to the Joko, to this evening's conversation as we continue with our look at misogyny, right? And the embrace of misogyny in the current political moment. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whenever you're watching this. I'm Brother Youssef, a professor of English composition and creative writing, a scholar of cultural studies with the concentration in the Black arts movement in the Los Angeles area in particular. And with me tonight, as always, my brilliant partner and comrade, Tasha, who is having some audio issues right now. And right now, Tasha, you're just regular old muted. But I know you're working with the sound levels. Any success? What do you think? No, because if you're talking, I can't hear you. So, but yeah, so you're working on Tasha's working on her the sounds, right? The audio levels on the computer so we can hear from her this evening sooner than later. And so we'll wait for her. But as I already stated, yeah, we're picking back up where we left off, last week. And as Tasha indicated, right, it was going to need at least another discussion, this misogyny on parade. And, that point right there, on parade, right, this spectacle of procession, right, as the culture, the discourses of the manosphere, at what and I don't even want to say a grassroots level, right? At this this social media platformed level, right? But that world, those kinds of discourses, have their roots in a lot of ways, are emerge out of the kind of shock jock language, shock jock discourses of the 90s, the material that one would hear on Howard Stern in particular, right? Or certainly as the sort of the poster image of the shock jock. Along with the more specifically political rhetoric of somebody like a Rush Limbaugh. And again, as I indicated, last week, the way that even would leak into, and I'm not even sure, actually, that's probably being too generous, the way that was also seeded in the sports talk area. So that by the time somebody like, a Donald Trump who thrived in those environments emerges. All right. So Tasha's having audio issues, and my throat is about to give out. My vocal cords are about to give out. We're having some communication issues tonight. I don't know. Is that a Mercury in retrograde thing? I don't know. I'm gonna try water to get yeah, whatever that was, that frog in my throat suddenly. Anyway, so it's just on parade in a way, right, that had always been not even, under the surface, but, simmering on the top. And again, as we discussed last week, in this reaction, right, politically, culturally, socially reactionary to the demands, the human rights demands of women in the 20th century, right, and coming out of the 20th century, and achieved certain kinds of access and entry in the late 20th century. And so now it's on parade. The permission structures for cruelty, for body shaming, for challenging the qualifications and intelligence of women in the public sphere. And it's more than just that cruelty, because it's also programmatic, right? There is now open talk of repealing the 19th Amendment, right? Removing the vote from women. And I added to this title, Misogynoir, because of the way in which we know that this has been particularly targeted and acutely felt by African women, Black women, Afro-descended women in the country, whether through the mass layoffs in the federal government, where again we are in a sense overrepresented in terms of where we work, where that is, Black people in the United States work, and that is in the public sector, right? Federal, state, local. And then in the in terms of the various kinds of agency shutdowns and starving agencies of funds through Doge, through this big bill that goes into effect next year. But the kind of open vitriol and open hatred I guess it's like everything else, right? The hoods are off, the pretense is over, the folks in this regime and that 30% hardcore support for them just don't care anymore. But again, it's a situation, all of the various ironies. like most, really every, um, fascist expression, um, promotes itself as the protector of women and family. And this is exactly what the Trump regime projected. You recall um, at least one of, and really, I think several of his campaign speeches, campaign rallies. He made that typical fascist claim. I'm the only one, right, who can protect you, and I'm here to protect women, right? And with all of the horrible irony of such statements coming from one such as Donald J. Trump. But a movement that has, in fact, um, made the world more openly dangerous for women, and it's already a dangerous place for women. This country, it's already a dangerous place for girls and women, and even more so with these permission structures and the the energy with which some of the worst elements, that is, the most destructive elements in the United States, are, acting out, right, and feeling um, justified and supported in that acting out, right, in these spasms of various kinds of cleansing, as they see it, and punishing. I am suddenly alone. I know Tasha's working with her sound. I hope she comes back, because I was not wanting to talk to y'all all on my own. But yeah, she's going to try to log back in and see if her tech is working better. I mean, it's so funny how these are the these are the problems that arise, right? Digital life, right here. Here we are. Anyway, you know, we, about this particular misogynoir, right? And again, the way in which these current open expressions of misogyny aren't aren't merely, if I can use that word, ideological or part of creating, an environment, but are programmatic, right? And I'm thinking particularly right now, and why a misogynoir is appropriate for this follow up or for this part two. Just recently, right? The ongoing attacks on Black people regardless of origin, the attacks on Black people through the instrument of ICE, where again, as far as I know, those individuals being deported, the largest number of them are still African descent persons, um, Caribbean, other part of Latin America, Africa, Europe. The and Also, though, right, uh, these very specific attacks on two particularly prominent Black women, which has everything to do with efforts to repeal the 19th Amendment, right? Silencing women broadly, certainly silencing or taking a tool of access to power from Black women, in particular, the Black community at large, the Black nation at large. The and that is these programmatic attacks on Letitia James and Ilhan Omar, two women completely immersed, entangled with the system, with the state, right? One, an attorney general or district attorney. Not I drew a blank, right? But a state prosecutor, right? And the other a, a congressperson, right? Representative from Minnesota. But you see, right, that none of that matters because, again, for this particular regime, they can abide no form of resistance, so that even the liberal resistance. How dare I even use the word resistance? The liberal opposition that's barely oppositional is more than their politic can bear, right? Again, the madness of, or at least the inaccuracy of Stephen Miller characterizing the Democratic Party as a terrorist organization. Um, Now we know an argument can be made for that if you are coming at it from an anti-imperialist point of view, but that's not what he means. Um, so it doesn't matter that Letitia James and Ilhan Omar are part of the state, right? They still represent opposition, and they still represent Black people and Black women in particular out of their place. Tasha is forward with us again. Let's see if we have some improvement. Hi, Tasha.
Hi.
Hi, I can
All
hear you.
right.
Yeah,
All else fails, you restart the computer.
that's right. Exactly. And I just kept talking because I wanted to leave what you do for you. So I'm gonna stop where I
Oh,
am and just let you come on in and say hi and do
okay.
what you
Well,
do.
okay. Hi, everybody. And to not take long doing what we usually do in opening so the flow can continue to flow. Yeah, glad to get through this little snafu, which seemed to be purposeful because an important call came through while I was fiddling around, telling me something I needed to know. So, we first of all acknowledge that
Mhm.
everything that's going on is not visible, right? Everything that guides our lives and helps us along the way in the visible world is not necessarily of the visible world, and I say that without hesitation because I definitely ascribe to a more than materialist um, thought way, right? um, and so we always forefront those energies that have shaped our individual life paths, those parenting forces in our lives that have brought us to the point in our life path where we know that um, we are dedicated and devoted to being a part of uh, ending misery in the world, right? Human manufactured misery can be also humanly um, dismantled and eliminated. And we are glad to be a part of that effort. We forefront that we are, when we greet everybody participating with us, um, that we are members of this African global family and uh, forefront those members of the African global family, some whose names still echo um, in the collective consciousness, and some whose names are no longer called, but whose energies are still felt, to also contribute, who have also contributed their energies and insights and ingenuity and skill and strategy and fortitude and all of those things that have been needed and necessary in resisting the forces of immiseration, um, taken collectively as all of the different isms and schisms that we know um, are, the ultimately the authors of this, of these negative human conditions, negative um, earth conditions, negative and death generating uh, conditions for all of the beings in the planet. And we know that all the work that we do, and we always recognize and forefront and present our recognition that what we do at the grace, the hospitality of the First Nations ancestors of these lands that we're in, the Tongavar lands, the Turtle Island lands taken collectively. Um, it's at the hospitality of those ancestors that we, members of the African family, are here doing the work of human liberation, and at the hospitality of their descendants who continue to do the work of claiming their sovereignty, preserving their culture, um, and projecting their strong, strong, life affirming wisdoms into this time and space. And so with all of that, um, I have said that which I ordinarily say, and the conversation can continue. Glad to have overcome the technical difficulty.
Well, let's make it a conversation. You were able to hear me.
Except that I was in and out. So
Okay.
yeah,
Well, where
no.
I left off was, I was pointing out, right, this particular targeting right now, right, of Elon Omar, right, as for whatever reason, I don't even know that she specifically was in the news this week, except that Donald Trump has put her in the news with his insulting usual, right,
Mm-hmm,
and the entire Somali peoples,
mm-hmm,
wherever they may be.
mm-hmm.
Again, reverting to default. And again, the sort of the vindictiveness of trying to re-indict Letitia James. And wasn't it just last week that
Yeah.
the judges threw that case out? And I
Mm-hmm.
think there was an effort to re-indict, right? And I'm not sure. I think I might have already seen a headline that it's already been thrown out again, but I'm not sure about that. And the point
Mm-hmm.
being that they're not giving up, right? They want to punish her.
Yeah.
And they want to punish her specifically for being a somebody black and somebody a woman, right? A black woman,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
almost like on each count and on the one count of being, being both. And how dare you, right? Get out
Absolutely
of
have
your
the
place
audacity, yes, to hold me
and
accountable. Mm-hmm.
hold me. Yes, exactly, right.
Mm-hmm.
That how just completely unacceptable that is. But so where those things, right, where these fundamentals of this modern world, right, come together. The
Mm-hmm.
fundamentals of a very particular kind of patriarchal and misogynistic, both in the sense of an actual hatred of women and
Mm-hmm.
fear and distrust of women that is cultivated by the culture,
Mm-hmm.
and that way of defining misogyny, right? The policing of girls and women.
Mhm.
the way in which culture polices
Mhm.
women, right? For the patriarchy
Mhm. Mhm.
that
Mhm.
yeah, you know, and in so
Mhm.
many ways, right? Uh, that's what it got to do right now, uh, because it's just they are unable to bear the weight of empowered women, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, that right, just that
Mhm.
right there.
Yeah, just on general purposes. I looked at uh, a few things and almost got caught in the rabbit hole to some extent. Not much of a rabbit hole. I didn't spend that much time. Um, of the incel world, which we said
Hmm.
talk a little bit more
Hmm.
about today as well, which is quite interesting, um, and how it has surfaced and taken shape, and in terms
Hmm.
a lot of some of the common descriptors that are used in talking about the incel phenomenon as a kind of body that has some kind of right cultural subcultural recognition, uh,
Hmm.
the role of the internet and the echo chamber and the information bubble and
Yeah.
these kinds of things having played a and continuing to play a major role, um, and the ways that um, it became in terms of what I uh, was looking at. It's described as something that began as something more or less as a lonely hearts club is the term
Mm.
that came to mind, right?
Hmm.
Where it was kind of like gatherings of people of both sexes that had long-term difficulty with various kinds of social connection, but with a main concern about dating and being able to
Hmm.
connect with whoever they wanted to be dating, right?
Hmm.
Connect intimately. And so the description in this particular doc that was from the UK, um, where they say like the more pronounced incel communities are in the UK and the US, and then there's something in Australia, but it's a little smaller, right? Less dynamic. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, don't know why that would be particularly considering the um, online nature of the
Mhm.
community,
It
and
makes me think about New Zealand and Canada, right? I mean, is this an English-speaking world thing, right? An
yeah,
Anglo speak, cultural.
kind of
It's that's
in terms
interesting
of
to me. Yeah.
maybe, because just in terms
Hmm.
of where and how it took
Hmm.
root and fomented,
Hmm.
it could be,
Hmm.
quite geographical in that way.
Really interesting. Hmm.
But yeah, interesting. And so it was described that it began to kind of the discourse within this community began to turn toward, a discussion of causes, why
Hmm.
it's happening, and this look for causes became more and more kind of abstract and philosophical, right? So it just became essentially a deeper conversation
Hmm.
that blossomed into narratives, right? That then blossomed into these two kind of identifiable uh, philosophical strains in the incel community called black pill and red pill. And the
Hmm.
black pill is this notion that, being unsuccessful in partnering has to do with your genetic lottery because you're unattractive. You don't have those things that allow people to mate are
Hmm.
genetically right rendered. And so
Hmm.
don't meet the day's standards of whatever, then you're not gonna, so you may as well give up,
Right. So you give
What does
up
that mean?
because
What
so
does
it's
that imply?
nihilist. Yeah. Hmm.
And then there's this other community that is like, well, it's not really about giving up. It's that you have to do what you can to meet the standards to improve your chances of, you know, acquiring a mate, a partner, what have you. So, I mean, it's quite interesting, but in particularly the black pill, which community, which is abundantly more nihilist, right?
Hmm.
There is no hope. There is no,
Right. No,
you're,
exactly. It's very much, yeah, that black pill. Right. Exactly.
yeah, um, that there is a good deal of misogyny,
Yeah.
concentrated misogyny, kind of very, everything that the dark web has to offer in terms of the kinds of violence
Hmm.
that are, promoted and all that kind of thing.
Hmm.
And so, um, one of the characteristics also that came up in this discussion, as discussed by people who are researching the phenomenon and people who have, there's like a subset of women that, like a handful of women that have, been a part of the incel community. Some of those folks were interviewed, and they're kind of talking about the strain of pedophilia
Hmm.
in the communities. Not surprising, of course, it's of a piece, Um, but again,
Hmm.
this overarching theme of compensating, this overcompensation for this underlying sense of inadequacy and the need to have the reproductive partner.
Exactly. I mean, it does it not smack of eugenics?
Absolutely. To
Yeah.
be absolutely, oh, it's totally eugenic. And it's absolutely, in fact, I think there was some
Hmm.
mention of social Darwinism, or there was some
Hmm.
mention of, mm, there was something that I was listening to that was said that was like, well, there it is. But even just to talk about the genetics, the genetic
Right.
lottery, and genetic
Mhm. Right,
ideals, and
right.
needing
Yeah,
to see
yeah,
it,
and even
all
to
of that.
speak in the language of, a mate, right? And
Oh, this
so
is,
yeah,
yes. And this is
and kind
actually
of very,
some
biologically determined and
precisely biological determinism. The um the the statement that was made, coming from, that they cited as something that
mhm,
is often stated from within the community, was that the Nazis had it right.
mhm,
And this is in this context of human betterment and human
right,
perfection and all these kinds of things, right?
right,
And so, but yeah, so this theme of needing to have uh the the female person, the person within the gender role, be defined by dominance and
mhm,
domination, and
mhm,
having the non-male role be infantilized, be somehow fundamentally less powerful than the
yes,
male in the relationship, right? So hence, here is this
right,
pedophilia piece, showing up,
exactly,
that has to
exactly,
do with them being vulnerable and easier to
precisely.
manipulate and control, quite explicitly, that they're quite,
An imbalance in power, right? It's,
yes,
this need for an imbalance in power, right?
right, as well as the rampant uh where the glorification of rape culture,
Mhm,
necessity of
mhm,
rape,
mhm,
legitimacy of rape
mhm.
as
Exactly.
a normal interaction, as
As
a,
a normal interaction, right? As something,
right,
um, natural even,
yeah,
right?
yes,
Um,
exactly,
you
yeah.
know?
And these
And indeed,
notions,
that's the problem with civilization, right?
right, right.
um,
So just this. this kind of what this kind of I've used the term blooming, so this just kind of flowering. I don't want to what discredit mushrooms, you know what I mean? But this kind of like appearance
But yeah,
of
it is
incel
that though.
culture
Right.
as a very potent iteration of the
Hmm.
culture itself, you know, just this kind of
Hmm.
spontaneous expression and outgrowth.
Hmm.
And, you know,
You
the
can
combination
call it a
of all these
virus,
things
something that proliferates like
and
that.
makes itself seen and changes the
And
strain and
and as you speak, I'm taken right back to our conversation last week, and because that describes the Roman attitude right there, right? One of domination, right? And sex in particular is an act of
mm,
domination,
mm,
in its social meaning, right? Is to dominate. So it doesn't matter what the partner is, right? As long as you are the penetrator and therefore the dominator, right? And it's it leans into that, right? It very much leans into that. Um, so anyway,
and yeah. So yeah, you know, very it's apropos, it's just so interesting to me that that
hmm,
culture uh began to um I don't the term fester is too judgmental. I'd like to be able to find something a little more you know, abstracted from that, but has been able to, you know, kind of cultivate or you know
hmm,
whatever happens when something is in a petri dish or you know whatever been
yeah,
able
just
to
that it cultivates, right? It
it,
cultures
it cultures right
and it
and then
grows, right? And it
expresses and grows.
grows.
This is
Right?
something
Yeah.
that's talked about as being kind of identifiably beginning to take on an identity in the early 2000s
Right.
kind
It
of thing.
became public when that young man, a
Yes,
self-identified incel, did that
yes.
shooting at Santa Barbara, right?
Yes.
UC Santa Barbara, and that's when it became public. So it had been,
Mhm,
already, something, and since then, it is,
mhm,
sort of even more grown in consciousness and
mhm,
in size, right? There are more
mhm,
incels, not fewer,
mhm,
after that
mhm,
incident, right?
mhm,
And
mhm,
there isn't, and I don't
mhm,
understand or know everything about
mhm,
those who self-identify, but I understand through reporting that there's an overlap, right, with the incels and these young men,
mhm.
who are known as the Groypers,
Okay.
followers
Mhm,
of Nick Fuentes, who is
mhm,
openly misogynistic.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
and that there's like an overlay, right? There
That would
are,
follow.
that many
Mhm,
Groypers are incels, right? Not every
mhm.
incel is necessarily a Groyper, but
Worker.
Groypers
Mhm,
might tend to be incels, something
mhm,
like that. Again, I'm not
mhm,
speaking
mhm.
definitively. This has been reported. I didn't read that today, right? So recommend anyone go look it up, right? Go see what's being talked about. But I do understand that the Groypers, along with Nick Fuentes, is again, it's another site of very violent,
Yeah,
ideated
yeah,
misogyny.
yeah.
And there's even talk in terms of that domination thing as a preference or a way of ex- rationalizing, such a distaste for women, and so a preference for femme men,
Mhm.
and again, maybe even femme boys,
Hmm.
as sexual partners. Although again,
Mhm,
not don't want to
mhm,
overstate that, but this idea of the femme young man, right, who might be
mhm,
part of that world also, and will
mhm,
cosplay as the girl, so to speak, right?
mhm, mhm,
Um,
mhm.
Particularly among the Groyper folks, I believe this is what was being part of what was
Interesting.
being explained, and as the some of the details, however true they may be, again, we're not knowing.
Right.
about
Right.
the Charlie Kirk shooter. It was in this sort
Mhm.
of relationship. Um, and so, this was some of the talk about that, right? That in fact he fit the profile of the Groiper in terms of the relationship that he was in, or at least reportedly and allegedly in.
Mhm. If the
Because as we
letters were
know,
true. Yeah.
that has kind of dropped out of the news, and as all each of these right wing, or at least grew up in a right wing family, shooters who happen to be young white men or middle aged white men, have fall. They don't stay in the news cycle. So
Mhm.
um,
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So patterns can't really be observed as as fully,
right,
you know.
yeah.
Um
You got
but yeah.
two, right? Being misogynistic in the other way, right? The privileging of their
Mhm.
privacy or whatever as young men,
Mhm. Mhm.
young white men at that.
Right. Right. And as was said in the discussion, just as an offshoot, not to go too far off of our topic, in talking about the young man who shot the National Guards, um, the conversation was about his actual trauma, his actual,
Mhm.
background in,
Yes.
coming up as a child soldier, being
A
in all
child
kinds.
soldier, exactly.
And yes, and kind of being cultivated all of his life as a instrument of
Exactly.
violence and killing and all of these things, suffering clearly from depression and PTSD and
Mhm.
all of these
Yep.
things. And the comment that was made in the report was, when it is when the shooter is a young white man, then oh, he's unstable and it's all these kinds of things. When it's a young person of color, then they're villains with an anti.
Monsters,
They're
villains,
monsters, villains.
savages.
It's
Pick
it's
pick your pick your
yeah,
insult or what, yeah,
yeah,
all those
yeah,
things, right?
yeah. It's
If
it's
you're called sick, it's not meant in the same way.
no, no, it's not there's no compassion. The kind of
Right,
compassion that they had for the young man that killed up all those children and at Sandy Hook. That all
right,
of it, there was
right,
such a
exactly.
sense of, oh, the
Right.
tragedy of his self-murder and all,
And
anyway.
all this,
But
right.
how this thing works, how this thing works, the psychology and the logic, the logic,
Mhm,
the psychologic
mhm,
of these
mhm,
things and of
mhm.
these, what keeps the myth
And
going.
even in
What
that
keeps
shooting, and I just heard somebody talking about that, I think earlier today, on the news, someone from the world of the National Guard, or working with that community, that even just in terms of our topic of misogyny, even with the death of this young woman, right? National Guard, no flags flown at half staff. Did that for Charlie Kirk, who has nothing to do with the U.S. military. But she is an afterthought, really. Right? Maybe they'll do it now if they're being shamed into it. But these are shameless
right?
people, so probably not. Right?
Probably not.
Yeah,
Probably
it's
not.
just we'll see. But the point has already been made, and how many days has it been?
Right.
So even
Right.
there, right?
Right.
They're trying to drum women out of the military, out of their
Yeah.
military, right?
Yeah. Right.
So
Right. That part. And the yeah, so the yeah, that the incel piece being this, that spontaneous manifestation of the underpinnings of the culture, of the, just the culture itself.
exactly,
Here it is for you. And this, all of these things, I did hear, catch a bitten piece of you talking about the attack on um, civil service jobs and kind of administrative jobs. I think I heard you talking
Well,
about that. I
just,
heard
you
you
know,
talking
yeah, the
about Doge,
public sector jobs, right?
public
This
sector jobs.
cutting of the
Okay.
federal workforce.
And of course the latest uh deprofessionalizing
Yes,
of certain careers as part of the removal of these funds that will
right.
allow people to do graduate education, and that will allow people to do
Exactly.
graduate education in this piece. And so the recognition that the jobs that are being deprofessionalized are held disproportionately by Black women,
Mhm,
um, and other women of color, when it comes to nursing.
Women in general, and then, Black women in particular in some areas, other
Yeah,
women, yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
wild. It's wild.
Yes,
I
it
mean, there are
is.
some really fundamental professions, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah, making this place unlivable. You're making this place unlivable, and people are not going to.
yeah, it's such a
The
conundrum,
responses are
right?
predictable, huh?
I mean, it's such a conundrum,
Mm-hmm.
so you're going to deprofessionalize these to make, and actually makes it harder to fill these roles that you
Mm-hmm.
want to fill with Americans, but you're
Mm-hmm.
making it more difficult for Americans to do it. So you're going to
Mm-hmm.
have to invite in. So again, yes, you're just making it worse for everyone, creating the dystopia, right?
Yeah,
Creating the dystopia of how many
yeah,
science fiction, movies, TV
that
shows,
we've
books
seen.
of the
Mm-hmm.
two-tiered, the people who live, on the cloud in
Mm-hmm.
the cloud city, and the folks who
Mm-hmm.
work in the mines to support them. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, just, it's like all the
Mm-hmm.
various versions they're working to create, right?
Yeah, working hard to create. So, um, so what is people's head are got to be on, continues to be on a swivel, oh, that
Mhm,
this is what's happening next, oh, that.
mhm,
But in terms of the writing being on the wall and available to be read, and becoming clearer and clearer, um that can be an easier conversation to have.
mhm.
There's so much right up in the moment, right up in the face to point to. I think I also heard you said earlier, this might even been an earlier conversation we're having today, or just something that you're kind of saying these days, that though, yes, there will be diehard head in the Sanders,
Mhm,
folks who are diehard, gonna repeat whatever set of rationales they offer for that purpose, because they understand that what people are, wanting to support has nothing to do with truth and rationality. So they just need any kind of rationale to
mhm.
continue to justify you know, the support and engagement. But the other piece, the SAVE Act, the which I don't know the acronym. Maybe you know the acronym.
No, I don't
Maybe
know the
you can
acronym.
look it up. But this voting, this election integrity, so called, right? And you've
Right.
got to bring your documents and prove your um, identity, as an American citizen, or someone with proper documentation, and whatever that means, because we know that means nothing. Um, and the what the criticism has been from women's voting women's voting organizations is that the biggest demographic that's going to have an issue with that are married women who have changed their last
Married
name.
women, exactly, which is most married women.
which is most married women. So, I don't know what that means for the like kind of the subgroup of folk who do a hyphenated thing. And I think both partners do a hyphenated last name. But anyway, just the issue of the discrepancy between the birth certificate information
Exactly.
and the voter
Exactly.
registration
It's like you got to
information.
bring your birth certificate and your marriage license with you
It's
to the poll.
absolutely exactly, which was raised with one of these Republican, one of the most ignorant. I don't know them, so I can't call the name, but a female Republican representative who has all of these, kind of crass, dismissive
Hmm.
responses,
Hmm.
non-responses that, just are absolutely, it's just like, did you really just say that? Because her comment, right? Her comment was double speak comment, um, when questioned about these effects, this set of effects. Well, your questioning that seems to imply that you think women are stupid. You think women aren't smart enough to know that they would have to get this paperwork together and get this da 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 da, and there's plenty of time to do that. So you're saying, what are you saying? Women aren't smart enough to plan ahead? I mean, it was just really
Right.
ridiculous, really something to hear.
And
Um,
and and there's also that population of Africans and others who change their name, right? Who
Absolutely.
decide
Yes.
to use, to switch to an
Right.
ancestral name, right? I mean,
Right.
whatever that subset is, right? But
Mhm.
people who become Muslim,
Mhm.
regardless of ethnicity, and change their
Mhm.
name. Right? There's,
Mhm.
there's
Mhm.
another subset, right?
Mhm.
Performers, artists, writers who
Mhm.
change their name. Right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So there's a subset of people, the largest being
Mhm.
wives, though, right?
Mhm.
And it's going
So
to
just
affect them. I mean, it's going to affect their party.
yes, it's
Everybody.
exactly. It's stop, Nani.
And
Please
they
go
know
away.
and they don't care because they're ready to
No, they don't.
repeal the 19th Amendment.
Yes,
They're
absolutely.
they are ready to do
And
that, and they're dealing with it now as folks like MTG and Nancy Mace are trying to push back on some of this within their party. But anyway, yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
I was saying that, and it has just it's a general destabilizer. It just
Mm-hmm.
generally destabilizes the franchise so that, right, the
Yep.
people in control will be the people in control, while those who vote for their part of power, right,
Mm-hmm.
are left scrambling, including,
Mm-hmm.
all, as has been said, all of the rural folk who aren't going to be able to rural and transportation challenged, which is going to describe a whole lot of people, getting around, hustling around to these government offices, which also was
Mm-hmm.
posed. I don't think it was
Mm-hmm.
responded to, but the
Mm-hmm.
journalist also posed, well, this is can be a costly undertaking, getting all these documents and getting these things together and getting copies and all of these
Right.
things. It was such a let them eat cake response.
Mm-hmm.
Let them eat cake. Well,
Mm-hmm.
there's plenty of time to plan for that. And well, you paid for your marriage license, right? And you
Right.
paid to do this and you paid to that. It's like, yeah, you're making the point,
And yeah,
lady.
exactly.
So
And
let them eat cake. So okay, let them eat cake. But that is, yeah, that's the attitude. So it's voting destabilization, what is it? Suppression, uh
mm-hmm.
mass scale, just on a uh, to affect the entire population, actually,
Yes.
actually, to have huge and
Yes.
far-reaching effects. And so,
People are gonna, find out what the indigenous people have had to deal with, having to travel 2 days to get to a polling station and stuff like that, or
hmm,
or travel 100 miles,
right,
right, to get to a polling station
hmm,
type thing, because that's the whole point. They are at every point trying to make it more difficult to vote, and it's Trump defaulting to his rambling racist old man,
Mm-hmm.
but also take seriously when he's complaining about Elon Omar. Um,
Yeah.
these
Yes.
people shouldn't even have the right to be in Congress,
Right.
and he means that.
Of course.
You know,
They mean that. Yes.
yes, that these
That,
people
yeah,
should
they mean
not
that.
have the right to be in Congress. These
Yeah.
women, these black
Yes.
people, these
Yes.
Negroes,
These people of these
these
non-Christians.
other folks,
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
And they are. But it's interesting. Less than a year, then they kind of have to ratchet
Mhm.
up their efforts because they are so incredibly unpopular,
Hmm. Well,
and losing their grip, and all of these legal things nipping at their tails, both the Epstein files and now the war crimes in the Caribbean. It you know it's crumbling, but at the same time it's crumbling, they're also doing everything they can to consolidate power. And
yeah.
yes, the person waiting in the wings is also, I believe, far worse, because even
Hmm.
much more clever and devious. The more I think about it, the more I think that South Park is hitting it right on the nail, right on the head again, with their portrayal right now of the Trump White House and the
Mm.
scheming character of
Hmm.
the J.D. Vance,
Hmm.
and whatever side deal he has with Peter Thiel. They're capturing that
Oh,
one
wow. Excellent.
hilariously and wonderfully.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and yeah,
informatively.
mhm.
Hmm. Go
As
ahead.
whatever is up with, he's vulnerable.
Yeah.
But so are they, and whatever is coming next, right? The whole system is vulnerable right now, right? The crisis at every turn, and people of all ilks have kind of had it one way or another, right? And even these
Yeah.
elections are showing that
Yeah.
people have had it, even though staying within the parameters of the electoral system, people are showing that they've had it. And well, we'll see. The quality of these Democratic Party candidates. Um, you know, as long as the Democratic Party keeps being the Democratic Party, but it too can be seized and changed, just like the Republican Party was, which is not
Right.
the party it was 10 years ago.
Right.
Still
Right. Right.
imperialist, but not
Hmm.
the same, right? Christian
Yeah.
nationalists now, right? In a
Yeah.
much more substantive way.
Yeah.
And that too, you know, the misogyny and the racism of Christian nationalism. And I don't care that there are women and non-white people who are also Christian nationalists.
No, that doesn't. What does that matter? When has
It
that ever
matters
mattered?
not at all. Because
When
as
does it
we
ever
know, there are
matter?
plenty of non-white people who are full-on Americans, and that's its own
Absolutely.
brand of white nationalism.
Absolutely. Absolutely. White supremacy is not
Over-identified with the plantation.
not just for the white.
That's
Absolutely.
right. That's right.
So, um, it's such a time of very stark, clear
Mm-hmm.
dividing lines. It's
Mm-hmm. That's right.
what is it? What has been said? Which side are you on?
Which
And
side are
people
you
are
on?
rediscovering and relearning
Mm-hmm.
what those
Mm-hmm.
sides are.
Mm-hmm.
There's a very popular sister channel, like creator, I guess, YouTube creator. And she does a short series, and she's quite popular. She does her thing, and I saw her earlier today, and she was wearing an Obama 2028 right T-shirt. And what was interesting to me about that was just that we she has some, like, really, I think, really incisive commentary, made some really great observations, etc. But in terms of the kinds of alternatives, you know what I'm saying? Because what we don't know, we can have, you know. So of course, what is it's just this whole two-party limitation, the two
Yeah.
poles, the two-party dichotomy, and not no boxes to think with, no other boxes to
Yeah.
think with, even if we are making observations, there's still like that need
Mhm.
for political education ultimately,
Mhm.
historical
Mhm.
education, these kinds of things let you know.
Think
And so
beyond your boxes. Yeah.
yes, these are, there are the problems that are trying to be solved are very much on their way to being solved in many places, and there are blueprints all over the place, and that have been very systematically, deliberately, and thoroughly kept from your view for
Yep.
generations. For generations, stuff that we as Americans have no collective memory of, that are it's in the relatively recent past, in terms of, right, political work that's been done, in terms of the different kinds of options Americans were working with in the not too long ago, you know. So yeah, here we are, and there's, I think a lot more pushes have to come to shove, and I'm just going to throw this in there, and this is definitely an out the box speculation, but I don't know how, in given the climate and given the combination of ingredients, I wonder when or if there will develop some kind of actual witch hunt discourse, like with all of these neo pagans and
I wouldn't be
Wiccans.
surprised. I think in some ways that has, you know, that is underway in some ways. I mean, that's very much the language of, a lot of these evangelical, churches
Hmm.
and Christian that they. So in some ways that is probably underway. We just haven't heard about, women being snatched and burned or,
Attacked or,
you
yeah,
know, dunked in water or
harassed.
whatever. But yeah, I think that is,
Hmm.
certainly the language is underway. Um,
Hmm.
Speaking in that way, and uh,
Hmm.
what is it? Looking for explanations in demons, right? And
Absolutely.
uh, you know, uh, uh, secularism is demonic, and that language is used, right?
Yep.
And specific reference to neo pagans, Wiccan, etc. Right? That the society
Absolutely.
would even countenance their ability to do anything because again they don't actually understand what religious freedom or let me not even there are some who don't because they don't because again so many people in the United States are not
Hmm.
encouraged to understand how the system works,
At all. No.
what
Hmm.
the Bill of Rights is, even right, and beyond the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms.
Yeah.
But certainly there are those who do understand and just are opposed and openly lie about the role of Christianity in the founding, and these deist um, politicians and philosophers that framed the Constitution and the structure to benefit them and their property. They're but culturally, right? Beyond this, the the founding of the everyday culture, if they had the good sense to make that argument, they might have something there, right? Because indeed, the Great Awakening, the Great Awakenings, were indeed very influential
Mhm.
in the forming of this particular U.S. American um, cultural identity, right? National sense of a colonial national identity. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
but not the founders. So stop trying to say that these
Mhm.
documents, are Christian in the
Mhm.
way that you want them to be, and
Mhm.
and just
And
admit,
the
although I guess some of them do admit, you have no
in it.
interest in
Yeah.
democracy, right? Um,
Precisely, which is where I was about to go. The amplification they're turning up the volume of and circulating, and I'm sure because I actually never listened to Charlie Kirk. I don't know what he said, and directly. But I would not be surprised, that it would figure into his spiel,
mhm,
with these young
mhm,
people as they are
mhm,
parroting it back now.
mhm,
Um, this isn't a democracy. It's a republic.
right.
It's a constitutional republic. This isn't a democracy, right?
Yes.
So
Mhm,
seeding this idea, seeding the notion that
yeah.
all of this talk of democracy has been some kind of liberal hoax or some kind of, or and fundamentally, ultimately, some kind of demonic host or some, what I'm saying, hoax.
Mhm,
Because we understand the nature of those conspiracy theories, uh,
mhm,
it could be a Jewish hoax, Jewish cabal hoax, you know, it can take on any of those kinds of forms, but
whatever they needed to be.
the language is there and beginning to repeat itself. So the direct attack on the
Yes.
identity, the
Yeah.
American identity as democracy, and of course being spouted by a lot of young people who are
Mhm. And that
impressionable.
was the
That
argument. That was the argument from very respectable pundits and politicians on the right, when the Supreme Court handed the presidency to George W. Bush. That was, well, this is a republic, not a democracy. That. So at
Mhm.
least 2000, we were hearing that particular.
Mm,
It's
okay.
they come back to it when they need to. And
Mhm.
yes, it is very, it's the Christian nationalists weren't quite empowered then, though, George W. Bush and certainly was instrumental in their momentum, right?
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
but yeah, at least since 2000, we've been hearing that in a very public
Mhm.
way. This is a
Mhm.
republic, which itself is completely disingenuous, right? Even even in the Roman model, I mean, we understand, it's an elite democracy, but nonetheless, still
Mhm.
this notion
Democracy.
of,
Mhm.
and
Of
even the
democracy,
notion
right.
that the plebeians, right,
Mm,
the plebeian commoners elected the consuls. So what are you talking about, right?
yeah. Yeah.
From among the elite, right? But
Yeah.
nonetheless,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, it's an interesting little effort. So then, and I mean, because who is the great enemy besides, and indeed for its secularism, the Soviet Union, right?
Mhm.
So but that's the claim you're making. They were a republic also, right? In fact, the Union of
Mm.
Soviet Socialist Republics,
Republics.
right? So, um,
Mhm.
but they want the Christian Republic.
Mhm. Mhm.
They want they this they want, and so as you've heard me
Mhm,
say many times, as I see it's after 8 and we don't have to stretch it out, but as
mhm,
you've heard me say many times, in this volatile moment, where in the electoral arena, um, their power is slipping away, as people are voting, if not for the Democrats, certainly against the Republicans, and giving their
mhm,
votes to Democrats instead of a third party.
mhm,
Um, and again, it might need a viable third party, might need somebody with national reputation like a Bernie Sanders and now as a Ron Mamdani to say, I'm
mhm,
leaving this party and we're joining the Working
mhm,
Families Party, we're joining the Green Party, we're going to, we're not starting a new party, we're et
mhm.
cetera, right?
Yeah, yeah.
If people are going to be electoral, but in the meantime, right, is so people are going to the Democratic Party, so they're already anticipating the so-called blue wave in 26, and then it's true. All the indications show that that's the case, unless they find a way to steal the election or
Mhm,
fully
mhm,
suppress the vote, right?
mhm.
Because as long at this point people are pissed enough that, and it ain't gonna get better. The
Mm-mm.
big beautiful bill bullshit
Yeah,
kicks into place next year, right, in
right,
January. So it's only
right,
going to get worse,
right.
right? But the we've already seen. I always come back to January 6th. The willingness of,
Mhm,
and again, people who are not um, primarily working class in the way that people generally think of, the white disaffected working class, right, and being
mhm,
in support of these right wingers, just like the Tea Party. Many of these January Sixers,
mhm,
insurrectionists,
mhm,
are solidly middle class, upper
mhm.
middle class, even,
Right,
right. They are people who have a stake, right. They are not the desperate poor. They
right.
are not the completely disaffected. I'm sure there are some of those among them, but the general character are people who have a stake, right? They're not the at, they're not the suffering masses, as it were. But they've already demonstrated that they are going to accept results of a particular type, and if others aren't ready to deal with them, whether that be the state or somebody else, um, directly and harshly, and again, the inability of the state under Biden to actually arrest the criminal, the inability, the
Yeah.
unwillingness of the
Yes.
Republican Senate to not
Mhm.
convict on the
Yes.
second impeachment. I mean, this is
Yes.
they will. I don't know
Yeah.
how Mitch McConnell can ever live with himself. I guess he doesn't have to do so for very much longer. He's quite an old
Longer.
man,
That part. Yeah.
but he's going to die with that on his soul, right? That
Yeah. Yeah.
very much facilitated this mess.
Yeah.
They were so committed, that drug of
Yeah.
whiteness
You're
and the
so
power that
yeah.
comes
You're
with it.
so fucking racist. Yep.
They're just they what did Lenin used to say, or what Lenin his credit would say, and I'm sure he did. The capitalist will sell you the rope with which you
Hmm.
can hang them.
Mhm.
I mean, there's just that
Hmm.
they cannot get out of their own
Lovely.
way, and that
Mhm.
clinging to whiteness and whatever and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
again, where we started,
Yeah.
the deep antipathy
Yeah.
to the gains of women,
Yeah.
black people,
Mhm.
black women, other people of color. They just, they refuse to accept it. And white
Yeah.
women
Mhm.
continue to vote in their majority for these people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. Um,
so we
so
need to
finding,
organize and prepare, right? That this
mhm, go
We
ahead.
need to organize and prepare, and
Yes.
you don't expect electoral victories to be a solution.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Um, get clear about
Hmm.
the where, that this is not, one of the takeaways that has to, I think, has to really be taken away, is that this is not individual, the problem of an individual or a handful of people that can be named. This isn't a Trump problem, a Hegseth problem, a Miller problem, or a
Hmm.
Johnson, Mike Johnson. It's not a
Or a
right,
Schumer problem.
or a Schumer problem, or a Jeffries problem. It's not. It's a systemic problem, and it's a
Yeah.
white supremacy problem, and it's
Yeah.
a capitalist problem, and it's a
Yes.
this. So the uh understanding, right, that the, what do you say, the
Yeah.
virus is the thing that has to be dealt with, has to be
Hmm.
recognized, that that's the problem. And the good thing about it is there is a cure. you know
Hmm.
it doesn't have to, this doesn't have to adapt and change like something in the natural world and come back and more,
Hmm.
it actually, we're in a great position to see it for what it is and just say no. Just say
And
no.
just
Like, what
say
did you
no.
say last week? Don't be racist. Don't be, however you said it,
Right,
don't
right.
be racist.
Exactly. Don't be
Don't
racist. Don't be a
just,
fascist.
just don't do
Yeah.
that. Don't be fascist. Don't do
This
that.
is not,
Make
don't
another
be a
choice.
colonialist.
Don't be a
And really
colonialist.
stop
Be
being
a, yes.
capitalist.
Stop
Give
it.
that death march up.
Give it up. And
Give it up.
let's be human. There is an
And let the
option. This is
planet
not
and
inevitable.
everybody else and everything on the planet thrive. We and think of the
Yes.
industries that can be
Yeah,
livicated to just cleaning the planet.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Sciences of restoration, right? Which people are
Yes.
working on in other places
Yes.
where they have funding.
Absolutely.
How
Absolutely.
we can clean up the planet, how we can get the plastic out of the ocean, right?
Yeah. Find a way to do
So
that
yeah,
and wrap
let's
our
do
heads
that.
around that. Yes. There are options here that you can make a new world. Another one of my favorite um creators. I don't know. I still don't know the what to call people who do work on YouTube and the YouTube
Creators,
shorts, right?
I
The
think that's right.
creators.
Yeah.
I think that's right. Um, recently did a short that I think that he called it "I Can't Wait," and he was like, "I can't wait to get to the business of fixing. Oh, I can't wait to fix this." Right,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
was the name of it. And essentially, he just goes down the list of things that will have to be addressed, and the
Hmm.
huge opportunity to really push the envelope to some a world a country that actually works for people,
Hmm. That works for
that is
people.
actually in the service of the good, that is
Might give
actually
other countries in the world a chance to work for their people. Right?
that there's all these things that can actually happen. And so the whole
Hmm.
tone of his piece that day was, I can't wait to fix it, and it had to do with anticipating the blue wave, and also actually looking at the popularity. He said specifically, not not this Democrat of the 2000s, not the not this early 2000s Democrat, but these young radicals, these
These young
people that are,
radicals, exactly.
and not so young radicals, these people that are coming in, let's look
Yeah,
at this democratic socialism
that
and make it happen.
neoliberalism is dead and needs to be left behind. It didn't work.
Let
It
it
didn't.
go.
It certainly didn't work for the
No,
masses of people
masses of the
anywhere
people that make
in the
up the planet.
world. Anywhere in the world, it didn't work.
Mm-mm,
So,
mm-mm.
and folks are ready to leave it behind.
So get
Um,
on that train. Yeah,
so let's get on that train. Exactly. And so we will see. Um, yeah.
right on.
Anyway, we can say goodnight.
We can.
So I'll repeat then. Yeah. Don't be a fascist. Don't be racist. Stop hating women. And I know how hard that is for a lot of y'all because it is, I mean, it is the culture, it is the cultural environment. So there are all
Including
these
trans
encouragements
women.
to do so and not even know that you're doing so. Or at the
Yeah.
very least, if not hate, just stop distrusting, stop fearing. They're just people. You can ask them questions. You can, you can be friends. I mean, all these things, right? So stop it. Stop policing
Mm-hmm.
women and stop policing yourself in the ways that we embed the police, right? The police in our heads, like they used to say. And
Mm-hmm.
like always, Bob Marley put it, right? Revelation reveals the truth. Again, if you know how to read the book, right? Now to read the allegory. Revolution is the only solution. Make a revolution, y'all. And we will see you next week. Keep talking about
Right
it.
on.
Talk about the
Right on.
state of this world. Hopefully, we aren't at war by then with Venezuela.